You are pregnant. The doctor's voice had barely faded when a chilling voice echoed outside the iron gates of the foreign prison. Serafina, the execution order has been issued. Execution in 3 days. She clutched the pregnancy test result she had just received from the prison doctor, her fingertips white as she almost crushed the paper. On one side, a new life was quietly budding. On the other, a countdown to death. Serafina looked up at the sky, the cold wind piercing her eyes, leaving no chance for tears to fall. This drama was as brilliant as a maliciously crafted script. And she was just the scapegoat being trampled underfoot. A year ago, she was Damien's cherished wife, and Serafina, in Isabel's words. Now one was the husband who pushed her into hell, and the other was the white moonlight, who stole her marriage, her identity, and everything she had. She once thought that marriage was shelter, and friendship was a support. But in the end, her love became a knife in someone else's hand, and she herself became a sacrifice for their whitewashing. Too bad, no matter how meticulously they planned, they didn't expect that she would be pregnant. And even more, they didn't expect that she, Serafina, would not die. She would live, climb out of hell step by step, and make everyone who owed her pay their blood debt. Serafina stared at the 2 pieces of paper in her hand, one a pregnancy test from the hospital, and the other an execution order just delivered by the prison authorities. Her hand was shaking, but her eyes were colder than ever before. Congratulations, the prison guard sneered at her. Pregnant on this side, death penalty on that side, you're lucky in a way. The execution can be postponed. Serafina didn't speak, but quietly folded the 2 pieces of paper together and tucked them into her pocket. Her heart, however, turned cold inch by inch. 3 months ago, she was still waking up in Damien's arms, him kissing her forehead, saying, "Serafina, I will never let you suffer." 3 months later, she was sitting in a cold prison cell, listening to the buzz outside. Is she Damien's wife? The woman in that financial fraud case. Heard she laundered billions and colluded with foreign funds. She laughed, her lips pale. If she really had such intentions, she wouldn't have been schemed against until her life was almost gone. All this was a trap woven by her beloved husband himself. Damien, the man she had loved from college to the wedding hall. For him, she quit her job, donated a kidney, and cut ties with all her best friends. But on the day of the incident, he pushed all the evidence onto her. She was still overseas on business, but she had already been controlled by the local police and locked up in this foreign prison. Serafina did the accounting. I didn't know anything. She did it on her own. She contacted the overseas accounts. I only just discovered it. I was also shocked. I love her, but I can't condone crime. He defended himself in front of the media with tears streaming down his face, while she was pushed into the deepest abyss. And the most ironic thing was that there was a name in the prosecutor's testimony that was more familiar than familiar: Isabel. The little girl who used to call her Serafina, who lived in her house, wore her clothes, ate her food, now stood by Damien's side and became an important witness for the state. Serafina still remembered the day she inadvertently heard Isabel say to Damien outside the interrogation room after the trial, "Damien, as long as Serafina dies, we'll be free." At that moment, she realized that her marriage was, from beginning to end, a scheme conspired by the 2 of them. She lowered her eyes and touched her abdomen. That was a chess piece she had deliberately planted. She knew that if someone was pregnant before execution in prison, the execution would be postponed according to the law. So, on the night before she was locked up in prison, she quietly signed an artificial insemination agreement and completed the implantation with the help of a friend. She gambled everything, betting her life on this child. Now she had won. But that was far from enough. She had to live, not to survive, but to take revenge. "Serafina, someone has come to see you." The moment the prison guard opened the cell door, Serafina suddenly looked up. The visitor walked lightly and flamboyantly in high heels, wearing a well-tailored designer suit, with a soft smile on her lips, just like her well-behaved appearance back then. "Isabel." "Serafina, she whispered, but a hint of smugness was hidden in her eyes. "Are you all right?" Serafina saw through that carefully disguised face at a glance. Isabel paused, then suddenly smiled. Oh right, I'm also pregnant, 3 months along. Damien is very good to me. After you're gone, I'll take good care of him for you. It was as if someone had lit a bomb in Serafina's ear. At this moment, she understood. Isabel hadn't come to see her. She had come to announce her victory. But she wouldn't know that this time, Serafina would not admit defeat again. She smiled slightly, her voice as faint as water. You're pregnant? That's quite a coincidence. She took out the pregnancy test result from her pocket and waved it gently. I have a child too. Isabel, I won't back down in this round. She had already died once. Next, it was their turn to pay. You're pregnant too? Isabel's smile froze on her face. Serafina gently stroked her abdomen, her eyes as calm as a pool of stagnant water, yet revealing an indescribable ruthlessness. Yes, just found out. The doctor said the fetus is stable and very healthy. Isabel's face changed instantly. This was impossible. She had arranged everything perfectly. Serafina had no chance to conceive at all. The physical examinations entering and leaving the prison were extremely strict. How did she do it? Isabel tried to maintain her smile, took a step closer, and said in a low voice, Serafina Gia, don't misunderstand. I didn't come to provoke you. I just can't let you go. So you wanted to show off before I die? Serafina sneered. Tell me you're pregnant with Damien's child? You won. You've taken my place? Isabel lowered her eyes, putting on a weak and aggrieved look. I didn't mean that. I just wanted you to know that I've always loved him, but I never thought of breaking you up. Damien took the initiative to come to me. She raised her head, her eyes slightly red, with tears welling up. Serafina Gia, Damien couldn't help it either. He said you were too smart and too strong. So you teamed up to send me to the execution platform? Serafina interrupted her, her voice as cold as ice. Isabel finally removed her mask of weakness, her smile slowly tightening, her eyes becoming cold inch by inch. What if you're pregnant? It's just delaying things a little. Damien has already pulled some strings. Even if you delay for a few months, you'll still die in the end. And I will walk out of this prison cell with his child, openly and honestly. You won't win, Serafina. Really? Serafina's eyes flickered. She suddenly took out a small voice recorder from her sleeve and pressed the play button. I've always loved him, but I never thought of breaking you up. Damien took the initiative to come to me. You know I've always loved him. Actually, Damien couldn't help it either. He said you were too smart and too strong. The recording echoed clearly in the visiting room. Isabel's face was pale. She lunged forward to grab it. Are you crazy? You recorded me. Serafina slapped the back of her hand, the recorder still firmly in her palm. Thank you for personally confirming your relationship with Damien, Serafina said calmly, standing up slightly and smiling. Don't worry, I won't die. But you will soon. Isabel laughed in anger. You want to overturn the case? How can you win on your own? I'm not alone, Serafina said lightly as she turned to leave. I have a child in this recording. Most importantly, I've already died once and I'm not afraid to do it again. She walked with firm steps, as if she were no longer Serafina who was being forced into a corner by everyone, but a revenger who had crawled out of hell, ready to drag her enemies into the abyss one by one. Isabel stood frozen in place, her face turning from green to white. She knew that Serafina had really changed. This game was out of control. The moment Serafina returned to her cell, the entire prison block was quiet for a few seconds. Her pace was not fast, but it carried a sense of oppression. All the inmates subconsciously made way for her. Everyone knew that she had just met a VIP. And she smiled colder than anyone else. She sat down, leaning against the cold wall, and pulled out a small slip of paper from the lining of her prison uniform. On it was a number, and a code name known only to her and a friend. C13-inch. This was the only person still alive outside the prison who was willing to help her. She had saved his life once, and now it was time to repay the debt. Just as she was trying to figure out how to get the recording out, the prison guard suddenly came to inform her again. Serafina, come out. Someone has come to visit. Serafina's eyelids twitched. Not Isabel? Who else could it be? She slowly got up, and as soon as she stepped out of the iron gate, Her gaze was locked onto a familiar figure. Damien. He was wearing a custom-made suit, still handsome and composed in appearance, with a lawyer standing coldly behind him, holding a briefcase. Serafina. Damien frowned slightly, walked up to her, looking like he was unwilling but had to come. I heard you're pregnant. Did you come to congratulate me on being entitled because of my child? Serafina curled her lips in sarcasm. An impatient look flashed across Damien's face. You know your current situation. Don't play these little tricks. Being pregnant can only delay the death penalty, but it doesn't mean you can escape. Then why are you in such a hurry? She leaned back in her chair, her eyes sharp. Afraid I'll tell everyone about you and Isabel? Damien's eyes darkened, but he quickly regained his composure. I'm here to give you one last chance, he paused, then said coldly. If you're willing to sign and confess to all your crimes, I can try to get you a suspended sentence from the court. You know I have people. Serafina chuckled. Your people or Isabel's people? Damien frowned. What are you talking about? Serafina slowly took out the voice recorder and placed it on the table. Have you heard of this? Damien's expression changed drastically. She clicked play, and Isabel's voice filled the air again. Actually, Damien had no choice. He said you were too smart and too strong. Damien lunged to snatch it, but Serafina was prepared, snapping the recorder back. Don't be rash, she sneered. I've already sent a copy of this out. If you dare lay a finger on me, the entire internet will hear how your little darling Isabel badmouths you behind your back tomorrow. A flicker of panic finally appeared in Damien's eyes. Serafina pressed her advantage, stepping closer. Damien, I won't just survive, I'll make you bury the woman you love most with your own hands. Damien gritted his teeth. Serafina, you're insane. Yes, I am. Her gaze was like a knife. But a madwoman isn't afraid to lose. She turned and left, leaving Damien standing there, his fists clenched until his knuckles cracked. He finally realized that the Serafina who had once been gentle and dependent on him was dead. Now there was a cheetah wielding a sharp blade, ready to retaliate. And that blade, its first strike, had already landed. The night deepened, the lights in the prison cell went out, and everyone was immersed in heaviness and silence. Only Serafina, with her eyes wide open, stared fixedly at the ceiling. She knew that from this day forward, she was no longer a prisoner waiting for fate's judgment. She would take the initiative to reclaim everything she had lost from Damien and Isabel. But she also knew that the prison's information blockade was like an iron wall. The only opening she had was the name on that slip of paper. Felix. He had been a financial director at Damien's company, and 3 years ago, thanks to Serafina's warning, he had escaped the company's attempt to clean house. He was her sleeper agent, outside the walls, and the one she trusted most. But she wasn't sure if he would still be willing to help. Outside the prison cell, the night patrol passed by. Serafina, under the covers, secretly hid the slip of paper in the handle of her toothbrush, then closed her eyes. Tomorrow she had to find a way to get the note out. The next day after breakfast, Serafina was called for her regular prenatal checkup. Her hand gripped the modified toothbrush, her heart racing between control and a gamble. Inside the medical room, the doctor was busy preparing equipment, and Serafina was led to the inner room. In the instant the nurse was distracted, she quickly slipped the toothbrush into the medical waste bin next to the table, while secretly dropping a bag of tangerine candies, which she had hidden in her sleeve, next to the trash bag outside. The candy was her bargaining chip for the trade. Half an hour later, the janitor appeared to clear the trash, a taciturn old man who had worked at the prison for more than a decade and never said more than a word to anyone. But Serafina knew that he had contact with Felix. She was betting she could bet right this time. At the same moment, in an office building outside the prison, Isabel was holding a magazine in her hand, a smile on her lips, seemingly relaxed. Her assistant said cautiously, President Damien just called, saying Serafina has a recording that might be unfavorable to you, and told you to be careful. Isabel smiled, her lips curving. He still cares about me. He knows I hate trouble, so he warned me in advance. Then, should we send someone to take care of it? She gently closed the magazine, her gaze turning cold. No need to deal with her. She's a dead woman now, a death row inmate, her life already borrowed. The one we really need to deal with is that Felix she contacted. She got up calmly, took out her cell phone, dialed a number and said coldly, "Felix, clean him up?" And at this moment, Felix was standing in the corner of the city in front of an internet cafe. He had just received the note. "Catherine, contact me." His eyes widened, and he immediately realized that Serafina was making a move. But just as he was about to go to the underground network to send the signal, a black van slowly pulled up behind him, and the window slowly rolled down. A hand wearing a black leather glove reached out, holding a silenced pistol. "Mr. Felix, someone has invited you for a ride." At night, Serafina sat by the bed, quietly watching the sky darken. She didn't know if the note had been delivered, or if Felix was still willing to help her. All she knew was that this gamble had just begun. She bet on trust, Isabel bet on ruthlessness. Two women on an invisible battlefield quietly started the second round of their fight. And she inside the walls, and Felix outside the walls. Their fates were now tightly bound together. Late at night in the prison cell, Serafina stared at the ceiling, not sleeping all night. She kept waiting for a reply from the note, waiting for Felix's response, waiting for the crack in fate to open. But 3 days passed, and nothing happened. Something's wrong, she finally realized. It wasn't that the note hadn't been delivered, but the only pawn she trusted outside the walls had been removed. Prison visiting room. Isabel was wearing a white trench coat, looking clean, fresh, and pitiful, in stark contrast to Serafina in her prison uniform. "Serafina, I heard you're pregnant, and I'm really sorry," she said, her eyes red, her voice choked with sobs. "You clearly loved Damien so much, and he once said you were the most suitable person." Serafina didn't speak, just smiled softly. The smile was sarcastic, as if she saw through everything. "Isabel, do you know why you can never act with genuine emotion? Because when you act, you never see anyone else, only yourself." Isabel's expression faltered, then a layer of frost appeared in her eyes. "You're not in a position to say these things." "I'm pregnant. At least my life is temporarily spared." Serafina slowly approached, her voice as low as a snake's hiss. "Aren't you afraid that I'll overturn the case? Afraid that I'll expose those dirty deeds between you and Damien?" Isabel gritted her teeth. "What nonsense are you talking about? You already know about the recording, and you dealt with that note." "Cleanly enough." Serafina stood up, her tone suddenly turning cold. "But do you really think I have no backup plan?" Isabel's expression tightened. She knew Serafina was smart and ruthless, but she always thought that Serafina was just being stubborn and stalling. But what she saw now was a woman who was lurking like a beast, ready to bite off her throat at any moment. "What do you want?" Serafina's eyes were like knives. "I will leave here." Isabel sneered. "Are you dreaming?" "Not a dream, an arrangement." She stood up abruptly, staring at Isabel. "You'd better arrange your affairs before I get out." That night, an accident occurred in the prison cell. Serafina suddenly had a massive hemorrhage in the night, and was rushed to the medical room. The doctor diagnosed an abnormal uterine cavity. The fetus was in critical condition, and required emergency treatment. But just when everyone thought her condition was critical, a nurse quietly pushed her into the operating room. "Serafina, the plan has changed." It was the old janitor, who took off his coat and revealed a set of neat clothes underneath, his face cold. "Felix was caught. We're activating Plan B. Now there are two paths. Either you disappear now, or you really die tomorrow." Serafina's face was pale, but her eyes were clear. "Do it." Several hours later, the prison issued a notice. Serafina died of a sudden massive hemorrhage and miscarriage, despite rescue efforts. All information, medical records, and cremation reports were complete. Isabel was trying on wedding dresses when she received the news. "She's finally dead?" She laughed softly, her voice like a blade cutting through glass. "It's a pity, I didn't get to send her off myself." She thought the game was finally over. But she didn't know that Serafina hadn't died. She had already taken off her prison uniform, put on civilian clothes, and hid in the underground tunnels. Her eyes held the sharpest cold light. She knew that the real counterattack had just begun. The city's night was like an oppressive curtain, shrouding the darkness of people's hearts. Serafina wore an ordinary trench coat, sunglasses and a mask, standing in the crowd, as if she were just an ordinary woman. But she knew she was a dead woman now. The prison had notified the court, family and media of her death, and all her records had been terminated. She had gone from a death row inmate to an avenger completely hidden in the world. And the first thing she had to do was return to that place where she shouldn't reappear even if she died. The Tang family villa. At the same time, the Tang family villa was brightly lit. Inside the living room, Isabel, wearing a light blue home dress, was holding a glass of red wine and snuggling in Damien's arms, smiling radiantly. "Damien, is it really over?" she asked softly. Damien held her, his tone gentle. "Don't worry, Serafina has been cremated. I signed off on the ashes myself. She can't turn things around in this lifetime." She was actually quite clever. Isabel blinked, a hint of sarcasm in her voice. It's just a pity she used her cleverness in the wrong place, thinking that having a child would save her life. And what happened? She chuckled, raising her glass. "To the obstacle we jointly eliminated." They smiled at each other, unaware that outside the window, a figure stood in the darkness, quietly watching their smiling faces. Serafina's hand slowly clenched. Her knuckles turned white. She raised her phone, quietly capturing the scene. "You're laughing so happily," she murmured to herself. "Then I'll see if you can still laugh when I reveal your scandals." The next day, an anonymous account quietly appeared online, posting a blurry video. In the video, Damien and Isabel discussed Serafina dying well, evidence being burned, and money being transferred in the villa. Although the image quality was poor, it immediately attracted great attention. In an instant, hashtags like hashtag Damien corruption and money laundering suspicion heavy hashtag and hashtag condemned Serafina wrongful conviction cloud hashtag topped the trending searches. Damien was furious and slammed the phone down. "Investigate. Find out who took this photo immediately." Isabel, however, felt vaguely uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that the video's perspective, the camera angle, was too familiar. Just like someone she had thought was completely dead. "Damien." She grabbed his hand anxiously. "What if? Just what if Serafina didn't die?" Damien said coldly, "Impossible. The cremation report, DNA verification, prison signature. All of them are real. Even if she grew wings, she couldn't fly back. But what if she falsified the DNA long ago? What if that body wasn't her at all?" Isabel's voice trembled more and more. She knew Serafina best. That woman was most skilled at forbearance and calculation. Once pushed to the brink, she would retaliate in an even crueler way. And now she suddenly felt cold. A cold from hell. Meanwhile, Serafina was sitting in a dimly lit rented room. Her computer screen filled with red dot markers. Each red dot was a channel for Damien's money laundering. Each line was a network of relationships that Isabel secretly controlled. She connected them one by one. This was the price she paid for her escape from death opportunity. Now it was her turn to reel in the net. "Isabel," she said, her name in a chilling voice. "What you took I will take back bit by bit, with interest." The prelude to this war officially shifted to the second stage. From behind the prison bars, to the mists of society. From open struggle, to covert battle. The dead return, while the enemy remains unaware. Serafina's revenge had only just begun. 3 in the morning, the city slept. Serafina's eyes, however, hadn't closed for a moment. She sat in front of the simple computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The computer screen showed rows of financial transaction data and encrypted jump chains, red and green interlaced, like the beating drums of war. This was Damien's secret account system. To be precise, it was a maze of financial data that she had once personally designed for him. Ironic, wasn't it? The fortress she had built with her own hands had now become her weapon of revenge. Serafina opened a hidden folder, and a contract immediately popped up on the screen. Funding authorization document of Onhai Group, Singapore, account holder, Isabel. She stared at the words account holder. A cold smile emerging in her eyes. "You thought that by hiding black money overseas, I wouldn't be able to find you?" "No, Isabel, I'm much more ruthless than you think." On the other side, Isabel was sitting in a high-end SBA salon, comfortably getting a facial, with a tablet in front of her, browsing her popularity data on various platforms. She was already enjoying the identity of Mrs. Damien to the fullest, but the fine lines around her eyes still made her feel a little anxious. She instructed the staff, "Add some diamond infusion. I want to stun everyone at the Financial Figures Gala tonight." "Yes, Miss Isabel." "It's Mrs. Damien," she corrected unhappily. As night fell at the gala, Isabel appeared in a haute couture dress, becoming the focus of the entire event. The lights followed her every step, and the media cameras focused on her one by one. Just as she raised her champagne glass, before she could even say hello, a reporter's sharp voice pierced through the elegance of the venue. "Excuse me, Miss Isabel. Someone has reported that you are suspected of overseas money laundering. Is this true?" The air froze. The smile on Isabel's face stiffened, but in the next second, she regained her elegance. "I don't know what you're talking about. I am never involved in any illegal transactions." The reporter smiled coldly, holding up a tablet. On the screen was the on-high group account document, account name, Isabel. Attached below the photo were multiple transfer records, amounting to 200 million RMB. The whole venue erupted. Damien's face changed drastically, and he immediately wanted to control the situation, but was surrounded by the media. Isabel's voice trembled. "No. This is fabricated. It's fake. Who is framing me?" A voice suddenly came from under the stage. "Aren't you the best at framing others? Why are you panicking now that someone is targeting you?" Isabel turned her head sharply. There was no one there. But that voice was too familiar. As if it had floated out from a pile of corpses. Serafina's voice. She gripped the champagne glass tightly, her fingers turning white, and a ridiculous thought suddenly surfaced in her mind. Serafina isn't dead. At the same time, Serafina was in a coffee shop in the distance, looking at the gala's live broadcast through one-way glass. She took a sip of warm water, calm as ever. The first domino has fallen. Next, it's your turn, Damien. She closed the live stream and clicked on an encrypted file, sending it to the anonymous email address of the National Financial Investigation Team. The email's title: Analysis of Abnormalities in Damien Group Accounts. Suspected funds involved approximately 3.2 billion. Late at night, inside the Tang family villa, Isabel smashed the bottles of perfume on the vanity one by one in a state of collapse, the floor covered in glass shards. She didn't even feel the pain of her high heels stepping on them. She's still alive. I know she's still alive. Damien remained silent with a dark face, only slamming a document in front of her. It was an internal notice. The CBRC has launched a frozen investigation into Tang Group's accounts. Multiple transfers under Isabel's personal name have been classified as high-risk money laundering behavior. The money laundering channels they had painstakingly set up for 2 years were destroyed in a single night. Did we underestimate her? Isabel's voice trembled. Damien gritted his teeth. No, she's already dead. Someone must be avenging her. He refused to admit, even to himself, that Serafina might still be alive. If she really wasn't dead, then their hell had only just begun. Serafina closed the computer, picked up a black hard drive, and curled the corner of her mouth. You won't escape what you owe me. At 2 a.m, the lights were still on in the Tang family villa. Isabel sat on the bed in a silk robe, her expression dazed, her face pale, her eyes staring unblinkingly at the darkness outside the window, as if that night held something terrifying. She's still alive. She must still be alive. She muttered to herself, her voice as light as a breath, only her eyes filled with terror. Damien sat impatiently on the sofa, a cigarette between his fingers, the tip burning red. He had already smoked his fifth, but the anxiety in his heart had not lessened in the slightest. Can you just sober up a little? Sober up? Isabel suddenly turned her head, her eyes staring at him wildly. Damien, didn't you say she was dead? But that email, that evidence, only she would know the details. The account, the jump path, the camouflage interface. She didn't tell anyone when she did it. No one understands it except her. She can't be alive. Damien gritted his teeth, forcing himself to calm down. The hospital issued a formal death report. There are cremation records. Even her ashes. Did you really see the body with your own eyes? Isabel suddenly interrupted him, her eyes sharp as knives. No, right? You just had someone handle her remains. But have you ever thought, she might not be dead at all? Damien's face finally changed. That night flashed through his mind. The moment she died after failing to respond to emergency treatment, he didn't even enter the operating room, but signed the documents based on the hospital's report. Impossible. Then explain, how did she get the transaction records of our offshore accounts? Damien, we deleted the original path a long time ago. If she didn't write the backdoor herself, there's no way she could have cracked it. Isabel covered her head. She's right beside us, watching us like a ghost, slowly demanding that we pay for our lives. Damien suddenly stood up, grabbing her shoulders and roaring in a cold voice. Enough! Even if she's really alive, she's just a criminal who's been sentenced to death. Now she's just desperate. Are you afraid of her? Can she turn the world upside down? She can. Isabel looked at him, her eyes unusually clear and strange. She's not afraid of death, she's pregnant with a child. She's willing to fight. She's much crueler than you and me. Damien pushed her away violently and walked into the study, only to find that the safe had been touched. His face changed drastically. He rushed back to the bedroom and grabbed Isabel's wrist. Did you touch my documents? I didn't touch them. Isabel shook her head, suddenly her eyes focused. You mean? Someone entered this villa. They looked at each other, and a name popped up in their minds at the same time. Serafina. That night, the surveillance outside the Tang family villa was conveniently paralyzed by a virus, the time being a few hours before the financial account was exposed. Isabel almost collapsed. She's back. She's right beside us. Damien's phone suddenly rang, displaying the internal financial director's call. He answered, only to hear the panicked voice from the other end. President Damien, it's bad, the internal financial control system has been hacked. All the high-level accounts for the past 3 months have been backed up and transferred to an external IP. We can't track it back at all. What did you say? Damien's face turned pale. And one of the funding chains involves your bet with Haiwa Group. If it's leaked, it's insider trading. Damien's legs went weak, and he almost couldn't stand. External IP? It's her. Serafina not only isn't dead, but she's already starting to dismantle their entire business empire. At this time, Serafina was sitting in an old city coffee shop, looking at the mottled clock on the wall, gently curling the corners of her mouth. She dialed an encrypted number. Plan A executed successfully, we can move on to Plan B. The voice from the other end of the phone said, Confirmed target is on the verge of collapse. Do you need to start media detonation? Not yet. Serafina looked at the morning light outside the window. I want them to collapse slowly in uncertainty and fear. At the same moment, the news headlines quietly changed to a new cover. Tang Group's funding chain shows abnormalities. Chairman Damien suspected of economic crimes. Anonymous tip exposure. The mastermind behind the scenes is actually Mrs. Damien? Serafina not dead? Former death row inmate may be the biggest whistleblower. The storm has just begun. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the topic hashtag Isabel's image collapses hashtag quietly climbed to the top of the trending searches. At first, there were only a few reposts and comments, but as an anonymous video spread, traffic began to flood the entire network like a dam breaking. The video showed Isabel secretly visiting Damien in the VIP channel of the hospital. She was wearing a white dress, with a gentle and lovely smile, obediently holding Damien's arm, like a wealthy young lady. However, someone posted a corner of a court judgment under the video. Serafina, Damien's legal wife. The comment section exploded instantly. Wait, wasn't it said that Serafina was Damien's business partner? When did she become his wife? Don't you think that this Isabel seems to be a third party? Can someone tell me, was Serafina framed? Latest news. Serafina once reported Damien and Isabel's money laundering crimes under her real name, and video evidence has been packaged and uploaded to the forum. Just when everyone thought this was just the fantasy of some onlookers, a screenshot completely ignited the public opinion bomb. In the video clip of Serafina's trial, a confidential fund transfer chart, cited by the prosecution, was actually found in Isabel's computer background with remote control records. Even more explosive was that the informant's name was LYX. The initials of Serafina's 3 pinion letters. She's still alive. Under this hot comment, there were 100,000 reposts, 200,000 comments, and countless people began to question the truth behind this wealthy family's money laundering case. Inside the Tang family villa, Isabel's expression had completely collapsed. She slammed her phone on the ground. Why? Why does she still have evidence? Didn't you say that all the hard drives were cleared? All the transfers were made through my account, she roared, questioning Damien. Why did you write Serafina's name in that trust document? Because I didn't plan to give up on her at that time. Damien roared, his face extremely gloomy. Did you think I was willing to bet everything on you? I did waver when she was pregnant. Isabel's body trembled and her face turned pale. What did you say? You still wanted to protect her when she was pregnant. Damien didn't answer. But Isabel already understood. She hated Serafina's existence, and she hated Damien's wavering. You never really intended to only want me, she laughed wildly. Now it's good. She's pregnant with a child, alive and back from hell, and me, I don't even have a way out. She staggered into the dressing room, looked at herself in the mirror, her eyes empty. Tell me, Damien, if I jump off the building now, will I still be able to gain some goodwill? Isabel, don't go crazy, Damien shouted sharply. The most important thing now is to stop the bleeding. You must hold a press conference, stabilize your image, and push everything back on Serafina. How can I push it? Isabel stared at him, a strange ruthlessness flashing in her eyes. She has evidence, she has the IP. She has all the records of my participation in the transfers. Tell me how to whitewash it. Damien gritted his teeth, lost in thought. But the next second, the assistant Xiao Gao rushed into the room. President Damien, it's bad. The Lin family has issued a statement. Serafina is the Lin family's biological daughter who has been lost for more than 20 years. This news hit Damien and Isabel like a bolt from the blue. What? Isabel's face completely lost its blood. The statement said that Mrs. Lin has personally tested her DNA, and the matter of recognizing her ancestors and returning to the family is being prepared for public announcement. Damien's whole body stiffened. That was the Lin Group, one of the largest private enterprises in the country. If Serafina uses this to reverse her identity, and then links it to the evidence in her hand, he and Isabel will die without a burial place. The Lin Group recently received an anonymous package, suspected to be a clue to the Lin family's biological daughter who has been lost for many years, and the board of directors is quietly verifying. The Lin Group's official website was quietly updated. Although it was only an internal dynamic, it was still screenshotted and sent out by people with ulterior motives, causing heated discussions on the internet. Is the Lin family's real daughter coming back? Could it be Serafina? Impossible, hasn't she already been sentenced? But if it's really her, then what is Isabel? Inside the Tang family villa, Isabel watched all this happen, her nails digging into her flesh. She's actually the Lin family's daughter. How could she be? Damien frowned and took out the contract on the table. Isabel, the most important thing now is the issue of controlling shares. Rumors are circulating from the Lin Group's board of directors that Mrs. Lin is preparing to transfer some of the Lin Group's shares to Serafina. What do you mean? It means she will soon have enough capital to turn around and bite us. Damien's eyes were cold. If she joins forces with the Lin Group and sues us for property encroachment and joint fraud, the prosecution will definitely reopen the investigation. Isabel stood up abruptly. We can't let her return to the Lin family. We must stop her. Damien looked up at her, his tone meaningful. Aren't you the best at being a substitute? Isabel's whole body shook, her eyes suddenly fierce. You mean I go to the Lin family and replace her? You had plastic surgery, your facial features are 7 points similar. As long as you create a mistaken identity, get the Lin family's equity, and strive to withdraw funds and escape. Damien said in a low voice. Isabel smiled, her smile as cold as ice. Okay, since Serafina wants to come back, then I'll be her once first, and see if it's her that the Lin family recognizes. At the same time, in the underground apartment, Serafina was wearing a gray maternity dress, standing in front of the window, looking at the city lights in the night. Adrian put a document in front of her. The anonymous materials you sent this time have already attracted the attention of the Lin family's board of directors. The next step is to take the second step. Get the evidence and complete the retrial. Serafina's eyes were calm. I won't return to the Lin family so soon. It's not the right time yet. Smart. Adrian nodded. Once you publicly show up, Isabel and Damien will definitely be desperate. Serafina touched her abdomen, her tone soft and firm. I want to wait for an absolutely safe opportunity, for myself, and for the child in my belly. She turned to look at Adrian, her eyes filled with unprecedented determination. I won't give them any more chances to fight back. This time I want everyone to know, who is the real Mrs. Damien, and who is the daughter of the Lin family. Late at night, Isabel received an anonymous call. You think you've won? The woman's voice on the other end of the phone was low and hoarse, as if crawling out of hell. The real Mrs. Lin hasn't spoken yet. Isabel suddenly stood up, the wine glass in her hand shattered with a crack, and blood slid down through her fingers. Serafina. You're alive? A cold laugh came from the other end of the phone. From now on you will pay the price. Mom, I've brought your medicine. Isabel, dressed in a soft pink knitted dress, walked lightly into the Lin family's old house, her tone gentle and respectful, like a caring and filial daughter. Mrs. Lin lay on the sickbed, her face slightly pale, but her eyes were clear. She took the medicine bowl, her gaze lingering on Isabel's face for 2 seconds. Thank you, Serafina. Isabel's face stiffened. As a substitute, especially impersonating her archenemy Serafina, she felt a hint of unease in her heart. Mrs. Lin had been more and more polite to her recently, unlike the initial intimacy. She sensed the coldness but dared not reveal even a hint of it, continuing to say softly, Mom, I recently flipped through the old Lin family photo albums and saw photos of me and you when I was little. I really miss those days. Mrs. Lin lowered her head and drank the medicine, not responding. At this moment, a servant brought refreshments and accidentally knocked over a rosewood jewelry box, and a silver chain rolled out. Isabel's eyes swept over it, and her face turned pale instantly. She recognized that silver chain. She had even personally torn it from Serafina's neck and thrown it into the trash. But now, it appeared intact beside Mrs. Lin. Mom. This chain. Mrs. Lin raised her head, her eyes suddenly sharp. You've seen it? Isabel was speechless for a moment. Of course. It's mine. Mrs. Lin's lips curled into a smile, but the smile was full of meaning. Yes, after you ran away, only this chain went with you. She touched the silver chain, her tone gentle. This is what Xiao Xian always wore as a child. She was wearing it the day she went missing, and we never found it again. Recently, I received an anonymous package. Inside was this chain, and a strand of her hair. Isabel's whole body stiffened, her nails digging deeply into her palms. Mom, I accidentally lost this chain. Someone must have picked it up. Mrs. Lin didn't answer, only smiled gently. Some people, after acting for too long, forget who they are. She looked at Isabel. Don't you think so? The air instantly solidified. Isabel's forehead was beaded with cold sweat. She forced herself to suppress her panic and squeezed out a smile. Mom, I don't understand what you mean. Mrs. Lin smiled faintly and closed her eyes. It's nothing. You can go out first. I'm tired. She's starting to suspect me. Back in the car, Isabel's face was as white as paper, and she said to Damien in a hurried tone, If I stay any longer, I'm sure to be exposed. Damien lit a cigarette, his eyes cold. Don't lose your head. The only thing you can do now is to continue to maintain the identity of Mrs. Lin. Once the board of directors officially announces that you are the heir and you get the shares, everything will be stable. But what if Serafina really comes back? Damien abruptly stubbed out the cigarette, his gaze as cold as a blade. If she dares to come back, don't blame me for not caring about the child's life. Isabel's heart skipped a beat, and she lowered her head in silence. Meanwhile, Serafina was sitting under a dim light, quietly looking at a Lin family genetic database. Adrian handed over a test report. I sent your necklace back to the Lin family to sow discord. What do you plan to do next? Serafina's lips curled into a smile. She acts, and I'll play along with her until the very end. But it would be too flamboyant for someone who is dead, like me, to suddenly jump out. She put away the test report, her eyes cold. Let's let the Lin family find out who I am themselves. When the time comes, I won't even have to personally acknowledge my ancestors. They will personally come to my door and beg me to come back. The game of the real and fake heiress has only just begun. The Serafina case will be reopened for investigation. When this news was quietly updated on the internal page of the court's website, almost no one in the legal circle noticed it. But for Damien and Isabel, it was a resounding slap in the face. Who let her appeal? The lawyer. Which lawyer is it? Damien slammed the ashtray on his desk, his forehead veins bulging. He never expected that this woman, whom he had already sent to the guillotine, could still bite him back. I've arranged everything perfectly. All the evidence points to her. How could she possibly have a chance to overturn the case? He growled through clenched teeth, his eyes as sinister as a viper. At this very moment, on the other end, in a dimly lit basement, a new set of data images was projected on the wall in front of Serafina. Adrian pressed the remote control and smiled faintly. This is Vincent, a golden-tongued criminal defense lawyer. He has won acquittals for 3 death row inmates. The industry jokingly calls him a genius who pulls the living from a pile of dead people. I will be working with him to overturn your case. As he spoke, a young man in a suit and tie, with a straight figure, walked into the light. He had handsome features and a composed expression, holding a thick stack of files in his hand. Miss Serafina. Vincent nodded slightly. I have found key evidence. The illegal fund transfers in your account were not operated by you personally, but were transferred by Damien through an offshore company set up in your name. We have obtained a professional analysis report of the IP address and data timestamps, which can be used as exculpatory evidence. Serafina took a deep breath, her fingertips trembling slightly. It wasn't that she hadn't waited for hope, but this time, she finally saw a crack in the door of hope being pushed open. Vincent continued. In addition, I have also pulled up a recent anonymous property purchase record for Isabel. The buyer's identity is her mother, and the property previously belonged to a shell company on the money laundering list. This asset is likely Damien's reward to her. Serafina sneered. They really divided the spoils long ago. Vincent handed over the information. Are you willing to go to court? Even if it's just a remote video format, it will have a greater impact on the jury. Serafina didn't answer immediately, but raised her hand to gently stroke her slightly bulging abdomen. I promise you, but not now. Vincent was stunned. Serafina raised her eyes, her expression calm. I know what kind of people Damien and Isabel are. If I show my face now, they will definitely fabricate evidence again, and even try to kill me. I want to wait for this battle to be fought even more beautifully. Her voice was soft, but it contained a sharp and uncompromising ruthlessness. I don't want to just survive. I want to turn the tables. I want to stand before the judge and personally tear off their hypocritical masks. At the same time, Damien contacted a black market technician who had taken care of troubles for him in the past. I want you to investigate a man named Vincent. Find all his social connections, past court records, and whether he has someone supporting him from behind. I don't care how you do it. I want him to shut up forever. On the other side, in the Lin family's conference room, the Lin board of directors held an emergency meeting. The silver chain and hair samples that the old madam received have been sent for testing. Our people said that the DNA preliminarily matches the Lin family's genetic line. 99.9%, the real heiress, is still alive. 2 o'clock in the morning, the most secretive private club in the imperial capital. Under the dim light, Damien sat on the black leather sofa with a gloomy face, flanked by a middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses. He was the Swan, a renowned cleaner in the underground intelligence circle, whose secrets need to be buried. As long as the price is right, he can handle it cleanly. Vincent, Damien gritted his teeth. This man cannot be left alive. He knows too much. The Swan held a cigar between his fingers, slowly exhaling smoke. Are you sure you want to move against him? He's an A-level lawyer, on the Law Society's list of specially protected individuals. If something happens to him, the media will definitely dig deep. I don't care. Damien's eyes were full of ferocity. As long as he's discredited, even if it's slander, framing, or smearing, I want to make sure he can never appear in court for Serafina again. As long as I can delay her for half a year, my position on the board of directors will be completely secured. By then no one can touch me. The swan chuckled. Interesting, quite a wealthy and bold madman. He flicked the ash. Then I'll do as you say. But I'll need someone to cooperate and make this scandal look realistic. Damien raised his eyes, his expression cold. Isabel. What? Isabel was so shocked that her face turned pale. Let me seduce Vincent? Are you crazy? Crazy. Damien grabbed her wrist, his grip so tight it almost crushed her bones. If you want to keep your identity as the Lin family's eldest daughter, you better do as you're told. Don't forget how you got this identity. Isabel's eyes flickered, her chest heaving. She gritted her teeth and asked in a trembling voice, but what if I fail? Then you'll disappear completely. Damien coldly shook her off. I have no patience left. 3 days later. Vincent had just walked out of the law firm when he received a call from an unknown number. Mr. Vincent, I'm an old friend of Serafina's. I have some important evidence that I want to give you in private, but I don't want to alarm her. Can we meet? It was a woman's voice, gentle and earnest. Vincent hesitated for a moment and agreed. The two arranged to meet at a semi-closed cafe. As soon as Vincent sat down, he saw that familiar yet unfamiliar face, Isabel. She was wearing a simple beige trench coat, her hair loosely pinned up, and her eyes were pitiful. Mr. Vincent, thank you for seeing me. Vincent's expression didn't change, his tone calm. What do you want with me? Isabel lowered her head and took out a stack of documents from her bag. I found some copies of Damien's financial data from overseas transactions. He has gone to great lengths to frame Serafina. I know you are her defense lawyer, and I want to help you. Vincent took the documents, but didn't flip through them. He just looked at her steadily. You're Damien's people, aren't you? Isabel's face changed. You appeared too conveniently, and your attitude is too eager. Someone who genuinely wants to help Serafina wouldn't choose to meet me in private, in a place like this. Vincent said lightly. Are you here to trick me, or to set me up? Isabel's fingers trembled slightly, and she almost couldn't hold her expression. She didn't expect this man to be so vigilant and impenetrable. At the same time, Serafina had already watched the entire meeting through remote surveillance. Adrian turned off the screen and said softly, She's anxious, which means Damien is already unstable. Serafina's eyes were cold. The more anxious Isabel is, the more afraid she is of me coming back. Good. I want her to be completely afraid. She stood up, stood by the window, looked at the city's night scene, her eyes as firm as a knife. Get everything ready. I'll make the Lin family board of directors beg me to come back. The Lin family's old mansion, an anonymous letter sent from abroad, ignited the calm lake. The Lin family's true heiress is actually wronged and living outside. The current resident of the Lin family is Isabel, who is not the Lin madam's daughter who was lost many years ago. After reading the letter, Lin madam was stunned. She had been observing Serafina these days, and there was always a faint sense of disharmony. But she always convinced herself. It was just that the mother and daughter had been separated for too long, and were not close enough. But now, Lin madam clenched the letter. A look of hesitation appeared in her eyes. Investigate. Lin father nodded and immediately instructed the family investigators to launch a secret investigation, prioritizing verifying Isabel's DNA, upbringing, and past connections. At the same time, Serafina learned about this through an old employee hidden in the Lin family's industry, and a cold smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. They finally started to suspect. Adrian sat opposite her, looking at this increasingly calm and sharp woman. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. What do you want to do? Give them a good show. Serafina looked up, her eyes sharp. Let the Lin family see with their own eyes that she is fake. 3 days later, the Lin family temporarily convened all board members in the family conference hall. Isabel received a call from Lin madam early in the morning. You must be there tonight. We have an important matter to announce. She felt a faint sense of nervousness in her heart, but she had to agree. She knew that the days she had spent in the Lin family in pampered luxury were all thanks to her identity as the Lin family's biological daughter. Once she was exposed, she would be nothing. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the Lin family conference hall was brightly lit. Isabel, dressed in a carefully selected navy blue dress, made an elegant appearance. Facing Lin Madam's scrutinizing gaze, she pretended to be calm and called out, "Mom." Lin Madam did not respond, but simply gestured for her to take a seat. "We invited you here today, because someone reported that you falsified your identity." Lin father stated bluntly, his voice steady. "We hope you can do a DNA comparison test on the spot." Isabel's face changed drastically. "Dad, Mom, do you suspect me?" "It's not suspicion, it's confirmation," Lin Madam said, word by word. Just then, the large screen in the conference hall suddenly lit up, and a pre-recorded video slowly played. In the video, an old nanny was being interviewed. Isabel is not the Lin family's biological daughter. She lived in the old district of Nanching since she was a child. She's just a child from an ordinary family. She's just Damien's mistress. As for Serafina, she is the real young lady who was lost. As soon as the video was released, the conference hall fell silent. Isabel stood up abruptly. "This is a frame-up. Someone is deliberately smearing me." But her voice could no longer cover up the wavering and doubt in the eyes of most of the directors. "Isn't that too coincidental?" a director said softly. "Isn't the old nanny in this video the one who took care of Serafina in the Lin family mansion 10 years ago?" "Yes. She even remembers that our third young lady had a small mole on her foot when she was a child." The moment the screen closed, a person suddenly walked in through the door of the conference hall. Dressed in plain black clothes, her long hair tied up high, her face cold and stern, her aura was compelling. Serafina. She walked in slowly, sat down in full view of everyone and smiled. "Hello everyone, it's been a long time. I am Serafina, the Lin family's biological daughter who has been missing for 20 years. Isabel's pupils shook, her legs weakened, and she almost fell. Lin Madam stood up instantly, covering her mouth and looking at her excitedly. You are." Serafina looked at her and smiled faintly. "Mom, I'm back." "You're lying. How could you still be alive?" Isabel's voice trembled, pointing at Serafina, as if she had seen a ghost, her face as pale as paper. Serafina just smiled lightly, her eyes fixed on her. "Isabel, you framed me, took the blame for me and stole my identity. Now that I'm back in person, I want to ask you one thing. Are you afraid? You're slandering me." Isabel screamed hoarsely. "She's fake. She's already dead. I'm your daughter." Lin Madam's hand trembled, and she almost couldn't hold on to the chair, staggering back and falling into it, her face losing all color. Lin father's face was livid, and he shouted angrily, "Enough! Test the DNA." No one gave Isabel a chance to quibble anymore. The Lin family had already privately arranged the DNA testing procedure. In just one day, everything would be revealed. Seeing the situation tilting, Isabel suddenly took a deep breath, and a hint of ruthlessness appeared in her eyes. She lowered her voice. "Are you sure? You really want to hear the truth?" Lin Madam raised her head and asked in a murmur, "What truth?" Isabel gritted her teeth, walked forward step by step, and suddenly threw her bag on the table, took out a report from it, and spread it out with a snap. "This pregnancy test report is what I did yesterday. That's right, I'm pregnant. And the father of the child is Damien. As long as you recognize me as your daughter, the Lin and Tang families can join forces and become stronger." The audience was in an uproar. Lin Madam's face changed instantly, pointing at her and trembling. You're pregnant with the Tang family's child." Isabel's eyes were filled with tears. "You want to abandon me, I don't care, but this child, he can be the Lin family's grandson. The bond between your two families." Lin father slammed the table angrily. "Shut up." Lin Madam's eyes wandered, her face twitched, and she couldn't say anything harsh in the end. At this moment, Serafina's brows slowly furrowed. Isabel, she's not willing to back down even a step. In this game, she even used the child as a bargaining chip. Even if her reputation was ruined, she would grab Lin Madam's soft-hearted weakness and reverse the situation. If you dare to do it, you have to dare to admit it. Serafina said coldly. Do you think being pregnant can clear you of your crimes? Damien is my husband in name, and now you say you're pregnant. Isn't that a blatant affair? Do you really think you're the Lynn family's young lady? Isabel gritted her teeth. He fell in love with me first. We are truly in love. You stole my identity, and you still want to steal my marriage and my life. Serafina's voice was sharp. Isabel, you shouldn't have lived in the sun in your dreams. Lynn father finally made a decision. We'll talk about the DNA after the results come out tomorrow. During this time, Isabel will suspend all Lynn family affairs. Serafina, you stay and live in the old mansion. We will personally arrange for people to protect you. This sentence was equivalent to officially acknowledging Serafina's return. Isabel was so angry that she trembled all over, but she could only endure it and retreat to the side, her hand pressing tightly on her lower abdomen. And Serafina stood under the light, her eyes as cold as a knife, thinking to herself, Isabel, do you think these little tricks can save your last foothold? This time, I won't let you turn the tables so easily again. The atmosphere in the living room of the Lynn family's old mansion was so oppressive that it was almost suffocating. A low engine sound rang outside the door, and the servant hurried to report. Mr. Damien is here. Lynn Madam was stunned, and then looked at Lynn father. What is he doing here at this time? Serafina smiled indifferently. It would be strange if he didn't come. Isabel has already regarded him as her last straw. How could he not take action? The door was pushed open and Damien, wearing a black custom-made suit, walked in. He still had that calm and composed appearance, his eyes deep and unfathomable, just like Serafina remembered. But now, he was no longer the pillow partner she once trusted, but a wild wolf in disguise. She's alive. Not only alive, but also more powerful and uncontrollable than before. Dad, Mom, I heard that there was a little trouble in the Lynn family, so I came over to take a look. Damien smiled calmly, his words making it seem like he was still the Lynn family's son-in-law. Lynn father's face was cold. You came at just the right time. Isabel quickly greeted him, her tone anxious. Damien, they suspect my identity, saying I'm an imposter, and they want to drive me out of the Lynn family. Please say something for me. Damien looked at her red and swollen eyes, his expression slightly moved. But the next second, his gaze fell on Serafina, and his pupils suddenly shrank. She stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, standing against the light, her temperament sharp and distant, very similar to the wife he remembered deep in his mind who was always submissive, obedient, and gentle, but completely different. She's alive, Serafina. Damien's voice lowered a few degrees, with a hint of probing. You're still alive? You're disappointed. Serafina's tone was cold. Not only am I alive, but I'm also going to settle the debts you owe me one by one. Damien's Adam's apple moved slightly, and he felt a sense of vigilance in his heart. He knew that Serafina's appearance meant that Isabel's identity would be exposed sooner or later. There must be some misunderstanding in this. Damien changed to his usual gentle tone. We all thought you had disappeared before your case. We all thought you thought I was dead. Serafina sneered. So you naturally pushed all the charges on me, so it would be convenient for you and your white moonlight to continue your dirty deals in marriage? These words made Damien's face change slightly. Lynn father snorted coldly. Shouldn't you also give us an explanation about this case, your relationship with Isabel, and Serafina's disappearance back then? Isabel's face changed and she grabbed Damien's hand. Damien, we agreed that we can't waver. You promised me that we would get through this together. Serafina looked at the two of them, her voice suddenly sharp. You did get through it, using my flesh and blood alone to build your innocence and glory. She took out her phone and slammed it on the table, playing a segment of audio. President Damien, Ms. Serafina's death sentence is about to be handed down. You and Ms. Isabel can arrange the wedding with confidence. Yeah, well done. Ms. Serafina is so pitiful. She didn't even participate in money laundering, and she helped you take the blame for so many crimes. Who else would take the blame if she didn't? Is she still useful to me if she's alive? As soon as the audio was released, everyone was dumbfounded. Lynn Madam stood up abruptly, her face as pale as a ghost. Damien. Did you really say that? Damien's face changed drastically. This is fake. Someone is framing me. This is synthesized sound. Whether there was a conspiracy or not, the court will decide. Serafina said coldly. Have you forgotten that I'm carrying your child? If you dare lay a finger on me, this child will be ironclad proof of your crimes. These words were like a thunderbolt. Lynn's mother was shocked. You're pregnant with his child. Isabel looked at her in disbelief, her face deathly pale. Impossible. Weren't you sentenced? How could this be? Serafina looked at her, her gaze like a knife. When you plotted to silence me forever with the death penalty, I decided to use this child to drag you one by one into hell. Serafina, you're lying. Isabel jumped up from the sofa, her eyes bloodshot, pointing at Serafina's stomach. How could you be pregnant? That child is fake, you made it up to gain sympathy. Serafina smiled faintly, reached into her bag, and pulled out a prenatal report, gently spreading it on the table. The paper was pristine white, the red stamps clear, stating in bold letters, 8 weeks pregnant, vital signs normal. She said word by word. A reputable grade A hospital, the hospital's seal, the attending physician's signature. Do you want to get it tested? Isabel's face was ashen, her eyes darting around frantically. Damien, she's using you, she shrieked, rushing over and grabbing Damien's arm. She's not your wife anymore. She's a criminal, she took your fall, she's already a death row inmate. Now she's back to destroy us. Damien stood still, unmoving. Serafina's appearance, along with her evidence, her composure, all caused him deep unease. He once thought his plan was meticulous and airtight, but now he understood. The woman he had personally sent to prison was never a weak lamb. She had crawled back from hell, and she was here for their lives. I'm your fiancé, Isabel roared hysterically, as if completely driven mad. You gave me the engagement ring, I planned the wedding. What is Serafina? She's just a scapegoat who took the fall, a pawn to shield us from disaster. These words shocked Lynn's father. What? You said she took the fall. Isabel realized she had slipped up and covered her mouth, but it was too late. Lynn's mother finally understood, her face turning whiter than paper. So, you and Damien were together all along? Serafina was really framed in this case. Isabel began to tremble, taking a few steps back. I just loved him too much, I just didn't want to lose him. You didn't want to lose him, so you paved the way with my life? Serafina's voice suddenly rose several octaves, her emotions suppressed for too long. Have you forgotten that I had only been married for less than a year then? You made me trust you, call you bestie. You repeatedly gave me drugs, made me sign documents, pushed me into hell. Isabel completely collapsed, dropping to her knees with a thud. I'm sorry, Serafina. I really just loved him too much. Please let me go. I have nothing left. You still have Damien. Serafina sneered. Don't worry, I won't let you separate. You will go to jail together, be judged together. You wouldn't dare. Isabel's eyes changed, suddenly grabbing a glass from the table and throwing it hard at Serafina. Serafina, be careful. Lynn's mother exclaimed. Serafina reacted quickly, dodged to the side. The glass grazed her shoulder and smashed against the wall, shattering into pieces. In the next second, 2 plainclothes police officers hidden in the shadows rushed forward and pinned Isabel to the ground. Miss Serafina told us there might be an emergency today. We have deployed in advance. Isabel roared. She's a criminal. I am Damien's wife. You've all been deceived by her. That child she's carrying is fake. Serafina crouched down, calmly looking at her. Why are you so anxious about my pregnancy? Isabel widened her eyes, her voice trembling. You want to use the child to win back Damien? You can forget it. He's not worth fighting for. Serafina slowly stood up, turned to look at Damien. Next, I'll let you see with your own eyes how the person you tried so hard to protect will destroy your life step by step. Damien finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Serafina, what do you want? Serafina slowly approached, her eyes icy cold. I want you to pay for your blood debts. Damien had never imagined that one day he would be handcuffed with cold handcuffs. At the Lynn family villa, the police presented an arrest warrant on the spot, accusing him of several serious crimes including forging evidence, money laundering, and conspiring to frame others. Just as everyone was shocked, Serafina calmly handed over a USB drive. This is the information for the underground accounts that you personally signed and approved, hidden in your company's overseas servers. My legal team has already backed it up and applied for a legal retrieval procedure. Her voice was neither fast nor slow, but it was like a sharp blade piercing Damien's chest. When did you get it? Damien's throat was dry, and real panic appeared in his eyes. Did you think I was just waiting to die in prison? Serafina slowly took a step back, her gaze like a knife. I was waiting for an opportunity to make you suffer a fate worse than death. Now it's here. Lynn's father's face was livid at this moment, and he slammed his palm on the table. Damien, how dare you use my Lynn family's daughter as a scapegoat? You know she's your daughter? Damien's face changed drastically, and he was stunned. This sentence made everyone gasp. Lynn's mother was shocked. What did you say? Lynn's father frowned, but did not deny it. His gaze fell heavily on Serafina. I investigated it. She is the biological daughter of me and my ex-wife who was lost more than 20 years ago. Back then her name was Serafina. Isabel was just taken away, and had not yet been put into the car. Hearing this sentence, her eyes instantly became dazed and her lips turned white. No, impossible. You're talking nonsense. She's just a child from an orphanage. How could she be the Lynn family's young lady? Serafina stood still, listening to Lynn's father's words, her heart surprisingly calm. She had vaguely known that her background was not simple, and now that it was finally verified, there was not a trace of emotion in her eyes. So you regret it now? She said calmly. Damien, you betrayed not only your wife, but someone you simply cannot afford to offend. Damien's body visibly shook, and then he glared at Lynn's father. You've been in cahoots all along. In cahoots? Lynn's father sneered. If I had really known she was my daughter, would I have let you use her life as a scapegoat? At this moment, Isabel completely lost control, lying in the police car crying hysterically. Impossible. Damien, you said you only loved me. You said you would make me the most glamorous president's wife. You can't abandon me. But Damien was unable to respond. His hands were pinned behind his back, his body was controlled by the police, and the sounds around him gradually blurred. The only thing that was clear was Serafina's merciless gaze. Damien, from the moment you sent me to prison, I was no longer a pawn controlled by you, Serafina said indifferently. Now, it's your time to repay. The police car slowly drove away from the Lynn family villa. The flashing red and blue police lights in the night reflected Damien and Isabel's ending in a particularly ironic way. Lynn's mother finally couldn't help but gently grasp Serafina's hand. Serafina, you've suffered. Serafina did not respond. She looked up at the sky, her eyes deep. This was not the end. The real revenge had just begun. Serafina stood on the balcony of the Lynn family villa, watching the police car gradually disappear into the night in the distance, her eyes like a calm and sharp knife. Damien and Isabel's capture was not the end of her revenge, but the real beginning of the prologue. Serafina. Lynn's father stepped forward, his expression complicated. If you are willing, everything in the Lynn group is yours. Serafina just smiled calmly. I didn't come back for this company. Then what do you want? Lynn's mother couldn't help but ask. I want everything from them. Her tone was soft but icy. Not just legal sanctions. I want them to be discredited, their credit to be bankrupt, their relatives to abandon them, and everyone to betray them. Lynn's father and Lynn's mother were silent. This was not the daughter they were familiar with, but who could blame her? The injustice of being personally sent to the death row. Everything that was taken away should not be casually concluded with a simple, it's over. At the same time, Isabel, who was far away in the hospital guarding the ward, completely collapsed. I want to see Damien. Why are you locking me up? I didn't kill anyone. I didn't commit a crime. She was disheveled, tearing at her hospital gown, her eyes filled with blood. You participated in forging contracts, building money laundering channels, and destroying evidence. Do you think we can't get your evidence? The policewoman coldly threw out a document. You and Damien have been accomplices for a long time. Serafina, that bitch, how could she? How could she be alive? Isabel's lips trembled, muttering, she shouldn't be alive. If she died, Damien could marry me. We had planned everything. Just then a steady voice sounded. You really thought your plan was perfect? The door was pushed open and Serafina appeared. She changed into a neat black trench coat. Her hair was neatly tied up. There was no hatred in her eyes, only complete resolution. Isabel, do you really want to know how I survived? Isabel was thunderstruck. Her mouth opened and closed, unable to make a sound. I'm pregnant. Serafina's lips turned up. Do you know what that means? It means that I am qualified to temporarily postpone the execution, and it also means that I have time to find out the truth. Isabel finally understood that the prenatal report she thought was just Serafina's struggle to survive was actually her first trump card for self-rescue. And now I have a second one. Serafina slowly walked to her bed, looked down at her. The surveillance video that you thought you destroyed, I have already restored it. Isabel completely collapsed, her eyes widened. Impossible. That hard drive was smashed by Damien a long time ago. Fragments can be recovered. You forgot, I majored in information engineering in college. Serafina said softly. In the surveillance, you admitted how you designed to frame me, how you forced the accountant to commit suicide, how you used love as a deal to exchange for Damien's resources. You said it yourself. At this moment, Isabel's face was as white as paper. She collapsed decadently, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Serafina stood up and looked at this former good sister. The corners of her lips curled up coldly. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I want you to watch yourself become a street rat day by day in prison. At the same time, the media was in an uproar. Damien's money laundering case reversed. Ex-wife Serafina was found not guilty. The surveillance restores the truth. Isabel is also arrested for the crime. The once perfect goddess, Serafina, became the key figure in exposing financial dark secrets. Serafina sat calmly in the office, watching the major news rolling updates. She knew that this was the real beginning. Those who once looked down on her and stepped on her to get to the top should pay the price for it. She gently stroked her slightly bulging abdomen. Her eyes softened a little. Little one, we won. The morning light shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Lin Group building, shining on Serafina, as if draping her in a layer of holy light. She stood in the very center of the president's office, dressed in a white suit, calm and elegant, her expression indifferent with confidence in controlling everything. This position was once Damien's dream. Now, it has become everything she personally took back. Isabel's judgment was officially issued. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison for participating in forging evidence, assisting in money laundering, and deliberately inducing the death of witnesses. That white moonlight, who once stole all her glory under the spotlight, can no longer freely touch the sunlight. And Damien was sentenced to death for joint money laundering and fraud. At the end of the trial, he glanced at Serafina. In that glance there was regret, fear, and acceptance. But Serafina did not look back. He and Isabel were no longer worthy of any of her emotions. Serafina moved out of the Lin family villa in a low-key manner, and lived alone in a quiet seaside cottage. She no longer needed to stand in anyone's shadow, not Damien's good wife, nor the Lin family's heir. She lived only for herself. Every morning, she sat on the wooden chair by the sea, watching the tide rise and fall, gently stroking her increasingly prominent belly, feeling a true sense of peace for the first time. As for this child, it actually had nothing to do with Damien. Serafina had asked a friend to use genes from a world-class elite bank for artificial insemination. Baby, mommy has finally won back a clean world for you. During an internal Lin Group meeting, someone tentatively asked, President Serafina, do you have any plans to return and take over the group's operations? Serafina simply smiled faintly. In this life, I once gave for my family, and later desperately fought for my innocence. Now I just want to be myself. But you are truly too capable. The entire market is waiting for your return. She calmly closed the documents. I have returned, but I am no longer the Serafina whose life was arranged. I will live for myself. She left the room, leaving a room full of people looking at each other. They thought she would be greedy for power, but she no longer belonged to anyone's script. She was the screenwriter of her own destiny. Several months later, the child was born smoothly, a boy, with black hair and black eyes, resembling her greatly. When the nurse placed the baby in her arms, a tear quietly slid down her cheek. She knew that the child's name had been prepared long ago. Ansel. To know bitterness, and be at peace. May he never experience her tribulations in his life. That night, under the moonlight, she wrote a letter and sent it to her future self. You once had nothing, and were once scarred all over. But you gritted your teeth and walked through all the darkest nights. Remember, you are not living to forgive the world, but to live well with your child. Serafina. Isabel went insane in prison, and Damien became a pariah that everyone avoided in jail. And Serafina, holding her child, walked into the dawn that belonged to her. She had lost love, family, trust, and even almost lost her life. But she finally won. Not because fate took pity, but because she refused to give up.